The cold darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions. Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge of his ship, the harmonious ascent, watching the blue planet on his display screen. For 47 days, his fleet had observed this world from a safe distance. The planet looked peaceful from here, covered in swirling white clouds and vast oceans. Vexthor was a tall being, with gray skin and 4 arms that moved gracefully as he worked. His people, the Ziltharians, had been exploring space for over 3,000 years. They had met hundreds of different alien species. They knew the protocols. They knew the rules. First contact was a delicate matter, but it followed a pattern that never changed. The humans below had recently developed fusion engines. They had built colonies on their moon and on the red planet nearby. Their technology was primitive but advancing quickly. According to galactic community guidelines, they were ready for contact. Science Officer Krelma, Vexthor said, his voice calm and measured. Are you certain the transmission is ready? Krelma turned from her console, her 3 eyes blinking in sequence. Yes, Commander. The message contains mathematical proofs, star charts showing our location, and the standard greeting. It is transmitted in radio waves, laser pulses, and quantum markers. They cannot miss it. Vexthor nodded slowly. He had done this before, many times. Usually, the new species would take days to notice the signal. Then they would spend weeks trying to decode it. Their governments would argue about what to do. Religious leaders would panic. Scientists would debate. Eventually, after months of chaos, someone would send a crude reply. Send the message, he ordered. A soft tone indicated the transmission was complete. The bridge crew relaxed. Now came the waiting period. Vexthor walked to his rest chamber, expecting to sleep for several rotations before anything happened. He had barely reached his door when alarms blared across the ship. Commander, Krelma's voice was sharp with surprise. We have a response. Vexthor rushed back to the bridge. That is impossible. Check for errors. No errors, sir. The response came from the planet. It is formatted correctly. They used our own protocols. The main screen displayed the message. Vexthor read it 3 times, his heart's beating faster with each reading. Greetings to the Ziltharian Imperial Scout Fleet. This is United Earth Space Command. We acknowledge your transmission and welcome contact. Please maintain your current position. Diplomatic channels are being established. A delegation will arrive at your location in 31 hours. Please respond with any special requirements for life support or docking procedures. The bridge was silent. Vexthor felt his skin grow cold. 4 minutes. They had responded in 4 minutes. United Earth Space Command, whispered Krelma. They have a unified military authority? Vexthor pulled up the galactic community database on newly contacted species. He scrolled through hundreds of entries. Not one showed a unified planetary response in less than 20 days. Most took months. Some took years. Pull up everything we have on Earth's communications, he ordered. I want to know how this is possible. The crew worked quickly. Soon the screens filled with data pulled from Earth's public broadcasts. Vexthor read with growing unease. The United Earth Space Command had existed for 83 Earth years. It was formed after something called World War III, a conflict that had killed 2 billion humans. After that war, the survivors had created a single government for their entire species. Not a loose alliance, not a trade agreement. A true unified command that controlled all military forces and space operations. Commander, Krelma said softly, look at this timeline. She displayed Earth's history. Vexthor felt his blood chill as he read. Humans had achieved powered flight only 250 years ago. They had reached space in less than 60 years after that. They had built fusion reactors while still fighting wars with chemical explosives. They had colonized their moon while their nations pointed nuclear weapons at each other. This is not normal development, Vexthor muttered. They should have destroyed themselves. But they didn't, Krelma replied. They unified instead. And now they have quantum communication across their entire solar system. Real-time communication, Commander. That is technology most species don't develop for centuries after first contact. Vexthor looked at the blue planet again. It seemed less peaceful now. He noticed things he had missed before. The orbital stations were not just scientific outposts. They were armed. The fusion drives on human ships were powerful enough to cross their solar system in days. Those same drives could be used as weapons. Another message arrived. Ziltharian Fleet, this is UESC Diplomatic Corps. Our delegation has launched. Escort vessels will accompany for security purposes. This is standard protocol. Please do not be alarmed. Escort vessels. Security purposes. Standard protocol. Vexthor opened a secure channel to the Galactic Community Council. This is Commander Vexthor. First contact with humans has been established. I am requesting immediate consultation. There are unusual circumstances. He looked at his crew. They all wore the same expression. It was not fear exactly. It was something closer to deep concern. The humans were coming, and they were coming prepared. That should not be possible for a species making first contact. But humans, Vexthor was beginning to realize, did not follow the normal patterns. They had done something no other species in the galaxy had managed. They had turned their capacity for violence into organized efficiency. They had looked at the stars not with wonder alone, but with readiness. The blue planet spun silently below, and Vexthor wondered what else the humans were ready for. 18 hours had passed since the first message. Commander Vexthor had not slept. He sat in his private chamber, reviewing files that made his skin crawl with each new discovery. The Galactic Community Database contained information on over 4,000 civilizations. Vexthor had accessed the section on species development patterns. Every chart, every graph, every historical record showed the same progression. Species developed agriculture, then industry, then they nearly destroyed themselves with warfare. After that came a long period of peace and cultural growth. Only then did they reach for the stars. Humans had skipped steps. They had reached the stars while still perfecting the art of war. Their space program had begun during something called the Cold War, when two massive nations had aimed enough nuclear weapons at each other to destroy all life on Earth multiple times. Instead of stopping their weapons development, they had raced each other to the moon. They had built space stations while preparing for global destruction. Vexthor played a human broadcast on his screen. It was called a documentary, and it showed human history. He watched armies march across continents. He saw weapons grow more terrible with each century. Swords became guns. Guns became missiles. Missiles became fusion bombs. What disturbed him most was how the humans presented this information. They were not ashamed. They discussed their wars with calm analysis, like scientists studying interesting data. One human scholar talked about something called World War II, which had killed 75 million humans in just 6 years. The war drove unprecedented technological advancement, the scholar said cheerfully. Radar, jet engines, nuclear power, computers, and rocketry all emerged from military research during this period. Vexthor paused the video. They were proud of this, not the killing but the efficiency. They had turned horror into progress. A tone at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he said. Science Officer Krelma stepped inside carrying a datapad. Her 3 eyes were wide with stress. "Commander, I have completed the analysis you requested. The results are deeply concerning." "Show me." Krelma activated a holographic display. It showed Earth's solar system, with markers indicating human presence. They have fortified their entire home system. There are armed stations at key gravitational points. Their colonies on the Moon and Mars have military detachments. They have early warning satellites positioned beyond their outermost planet. "That is standard defensive protocol," Vexthor said, though his voice was uncertain. "Yes, but look at the scale and speed of deployment. They built this entire network in less than 50 years. Commander, most species take 2 centuries to militarize their home system. Humans did it in the time it takes most civilizations to build a single space station." Krelma changed the display. Now it showed human ship designs. Their vessels are not optimized for exploration or commerce. Every ship, even their science vessels, can be quickly converted to military use. Their cargo ships have armor plating. Their passenger transports have escape pods designed for combat scenarios. Vexthor studied the images. The ships were ugly by galactic standards. No flowing curves, no artistic elements, just brutal angles and thick armor. They looked like weapons that happened to carry cargo. "There is more," Krelma continued. She pulled up communication intercepts. "We have been monitoring their public broadcasts. Look at their entertainment." She played clips from human fiction. Stories about alien invasions, movies about space battles, games where players fought against hostile species. Hundreds of scenarios, all focused on conflict with aliens. "They have been imagining first contact for over a century," Krelma said. "But in almost every story, the aliens are hostile. They have culturally prepared themselves for war with species they had not even met yet." Vexthor closed his eyes. "Show me their diplomatic preparation." Krelma hesitated. "That is what worries me most, Commander. Watch this." She played a recording from Earth Space Command headquarters. Human officers sat around a table discussing the Zeltharian contact. They were calm, professional, and terrifyingly prepared. The alien fleet has 17 vessels, one human said. Based on their energy signatures, they are likely using fusion propulsion with quantum communication. That suggests a civilization at least type 1.2 on the Kardashev scale. They have made no hostile moves, so we proceed with diplomatic protocols. Another human spoke. However, we maintain battle readiness at level 3. The escort fleet will include the Roosevelt, the Beijing, and the Mumbai. All 3 carriers will have full fighter complements deployed but not armed. We show strength but not aggression. What about weapons authorization? A third human asked. Standing orders. If the aliens make any move toward Earth or our colonies, we respond with overwhelming force. But until then, we smile and offer them tea. The recording ended. Vexthor sat in silence. They have battle readiness levels, Krelma whispered. They have protocols for diplomatic contact that include military response options. They are greeting us with warships, Commander. They call it courtesy. Vexthor stood and walked to the window. The stars looked different now. Less peaceful. He thought about his own people's first contact centuries ago. The Zeltharians had been terrified but excited. They had sent their best scientists and philosophers. They had brought gifts of art and music. The humans were sending diplomats with military escorts. They were bringing gifts, yes, but they were also bringing the means to protect themselves. Or to attack. How long until they arrive? He asked. 13 hours, Commander. Inform the crew. Full diplomatic protocols. But I want all shields ready to activate. Position the fleet in a defensive formation, but make it look casual. If the humans are as observant as I think they are, they will notice any aggressive posturing. Yes, Commander. Krelma left, and Vexthor was alone again. He pulled up one more human file. Something called The Art of War. It was an ancient human text over 2,000 years old, about military strategy. One passage made him stop breathing. Appear weak when you are strong and strong when you are weak. All warfare is based on deception. The humans were coming with diplomats and smiles, but Vexthor wondered what they were hiding behind those smiles. He wondered if humanity was appearing weak while being strong, or if they were genuinely peaceful and he was imagining threats. Either way, in 13 hours he would meet the humans face to face, and Commander Vexthor, who had made first contact with dozens of species, was afraid for the first time in his career. The human ships arrived exactly on schedule. Commander Vexthor watched them approach on his main display, and his heart sank with each passing moment. The diplomatic vessel was named the Kofi Annan, apparently after some human peacemaker from their history. It was elegant compared to the other human ships, with smooth lines and viewports that glowed with warm light. It looked peaceful. The 3 escort ships did not. They were massive, each one twice the size of Vexthor's flagship. They moved with precise coordination, maintaining a perfect triangular formation around the diplomatic vessel. Their hulls were dark gray, covered in sensor arrays and what could only be weapon ports. They did not look like escorts. They looked like predators. Commander, Krelma reported from her station. I am detecting active targeting scanners from all 3 escort vessels. They are scanning our entire fleet. Are they locking weapons? No, sir. But they are mapping every ship we have. They know our exact positions, shield strengths, and probable weapon capabilities. Vexthor forced himself to remain calm. Send the standard greeting. Invite their diplomat aboard our ship. Minutes later, the response came. Thank you for your hospitality, Commander Vexthor. Ambassador Elena Vasquez will board your vessel with a small delegation. We request permission to bring 6 staff members and 2 security personnel. Security personnel. Of course. Permission granted, Vexthor replied. He went to the docking bay to greet them personally, as protocol demanded. His diplomatic staff stood beside him, dressed in their finest robes. They held gifts carefully chosen to represent Zeltharian culture, crystal sculptures, musical instruments, and data archives of their art and literature. The airlock hissed open, and the humans entered. Ambassador Vasquez was smaller than Vexthor expected. Humans were short compared to Zeltharians, and this one barely reached his chest. She had dark hair pulled back neatly and wore a simple blue uniform. Her face was smooth, and she smiled warmly as she approached. Commander Vexthor, she said, her voice clear and confident. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, thank you for making contact with us. This is a historic day for our species. She spoke perfect Zeltharian. The translation software worked flawlessly, but Vexthor noticed she had learned the proper pronunciation of his name. That was a thoughtful detail. Ambassador Vasquez, welcome aboard the Harmonious Ascent. We are pleased to establish contact with humanity. They exchanged gifts. The humans brought art and music files, samples of Earth literature and scientific data. Everything was proper and diplomatic. The ambassador smiled often and asked polite questions about Zeltharian culture. But Vexthor could not stop watching the two security personnel. They stood quietly behind the ambassador, not speaking or moving unnecessarily. They wore black uniforms with no visible weapons, but they moved like fighters. Their eyes constantly scanned the docking bay, noting exits and potential threats. One of them, a tall woman with short blonde hair, made brief eye contact with Vexthor. Her gaze was cold and calculating. "Shall we proceed to the conference chamber?" Vexthor suggested. "Of course," the ambassador replied warmly. They walked through the ship's corridors making small talk. The ambassador admired the architecture and asked about the ship's propulsion system. She seemed genuinely interested in everything. In the conference chamber, they sat around a circular table. Vexthor had arranged for refreshments that were safe for human consumption. The ambassador thanked him and accepted a glass of synthesized fruit juice. "Now then," she said, setting down her glass. "I am sure you have many questions about humanity. We are happy to answer anything you wish to know." This was the moment Vexthor had been dreading. Protocol required honesty during first contact. Lies could be detected and would destroy any chance of good relations. He had to ask directly. "Ambassador, I must confess that we are surprised by the speed of your response and the level of your preparation. Most species require much more time to organize a diplomatic mission. How did you accomplish this so quickly?" The ambassador's smile did not waver. "We have been preparing for first contact for over 80 years, Commander. When your message arrived, we simply activated existing protocols. We hoped we would meet other intelligent life someday, so we planned ahead. Your protocols include military escorts?" "Standard procedure, I am afraid. Earth Space Command requires protection for all diplomatic vessels operating beyond our solar system. We mean no offense. In fact, we assumed you would prefer we demonstrate strength. It shows we can defend ourselves and are not easy targets." She said it so casually, without shame or hesitation. "We are not easy targets." It was a warning wrapped in diplomatic language. Vexthor decided to be direct. "Ambassador, we have studied your history. You are a warrior species. Your development pattern is unlike any we have encountered. How can we be certain you come in peace?" The ambassador leaned back in her chair. Her smile faded slightly, replaced by a more serious expression. "That is a fair question, Commander. Yes, humanity has a violent history. We will not hide that from you. For thousands of years, we fought among ourselves. We nearly destroyed our own world several times." She activated a holographic display from her datapad. Images appeared above the table, showing human history. Armies clashing, cities burning, mushroom clouds rising over devastated landscapes. World War I killed 17 million of us. World War II killed 75 million. The Cold War could have killed billions if it had gone hot. We built weapons capable of ending all life on Earth. Vexthor's diplomatic staff shifted uncomfortably. Krelma looked like she might be sick. The ambassador continued, her voice steady. "But we learned, Commander. We learned that killing each other served no purpose. We learned that cooperation achieved more than conflict. After World War III, we made a choice. We looked up at the stars and decided that whatever was out there was more important than our differences." She changed the display. Now it showed human achievements in space, colonies on Mars, mining operations in the asteroid belt, deep space probes reaching beyond their solar system. We unified because we finally found something worth protecting together. Not territory, not resources, but our future. Our children's future. The chance to see what else exists in this vast universe. "And if what exists is hostile?" Vexthor asked quietly. The ambassador met his eyes. Her expression was calm but firm. "Then we will defend ourselves, Commander. We are peaceful, but we are not helpless. We learned long ago that the only guarantee of peace is the ability to protect it. Silence filled the chamber. Vexthor felt torn between admiration and fear. The humans were honest, even about their capacity for violence. They did not pretend to be something they were not. We do not seek conflict, the ambassador added softly. We genuinely want to join the galactic community as friends and equals, but we will not be victims. Our history taught us that predators exist everywhere. We would be fools to assume space is any different. She paused, then smiled again. However, we also bring much to offer. Our scientists are eager to share research. Our artists want to learn about alien cultures. Our engineers are ready to help build whatever you need. We can be valuable allies, Commander. Vexthor nodded slowly. I believe you, Ambassador. But you must understand our concern. Your military capabilities combined with your aggressive development pattern make many in the galactic community nervous. Then let us prove ourselves, she replied. Give us a chance to show that we are more than our history. Judge us by our actions, not our past. It was reasonable. It was diplomatic. And it was terrifying because Vexthor believed she meant every word. The humans wanted peace, but they were ready for war. They offered friendship, but they came armed. They smiled and spoke softly, but behind those smiles was steel. The meeting continued for hours, covering trade possibilities, cultural exchange programs, and diplomatic protocols. Everything was proper and promising, but when the humans finally left, returning to their ships, Vexthor felt exhausted in a way he never had before. What do you think? Krelma asked once they were alone. Vexthor watched the human ships depart on the display. I think, he said slowly, that we have just met a species that will change the galaxy forever. Whether that change is good or bad, I do not yet know. The Galactic Community Council chamber was a massive structure, floating in neutral space, halfway between three major civilizations. It had been built 2,000 years ago as a place where all species could meet as equals. The chamber could hold representatives from all 47 member civilizations, and today, every seat was filled. Commander Vexthor stood at the central podium, finishing his report on humanity. Around him, representatives from across the galaxy listened in uncomfortable silence. Some species were humanoid, others were completely alien, but they all shared the same expression: deep concern. That concludes my initial contact report, Vexthor said. I have transmitted all data files to the Council Archive. I await your questions. The High Counselor, an ancient being from the eldest species, spoke first. Her voice was like wind through crystal caves. Thank you, Commander Vexthor. Your report has been most thorough. We will now open the floor for discussion regarding humanity's application for galactic community membership. Counselor Thren of the Pacifist Collective was first to speak. Thren's species had evolved on a gentle world with no predators and unlimited resources. They found the very concept of violence disturbing. I must voice strong opposition to accepting humanity at this time, Thren said, his voice shaking slightly. Their psychological profile is deeply alarming. They evolved on what they themselves call a death world. Their planet regularly experiences catastrophic weather events, tectonic disasters, and mass extinction cycles. They evolved alongside megafauna predators that hunted them. Their entire development was shaped by constant threat. Thren activated a display showing human evolution. Look at their biology. They have forward-facing eyes for tracking prey. They can run for hours without stopping, exhausting prey through pursuit. They can survive injuries that would kill most species. They are persistence hunters, counselors. They are biologically designed to chase things until those things die of exhaustion. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many species had never encountered a natural predator species before. High Scholar Ventique of the Archaeological Guild spoke next. His species studied the rise and fall of civilizations. Counselor Thren raises valid concerns, but I urge caution before judgment. Every civilization goes through a warlike phase. It is natural development. The humans are simply late to mature. Given time, they will outgrow their violent tendencies. Time? Admiral Krex of the Defense Coordination stood, her scales reflecting the chamber lights. Scholar, the humans went from wooden sailing ships to quantum-capable warships in 400 years. At this rate of development, they will possess stellar conversion weapons before they develop proper philosophical frameworks. We would be inviting a potential threat into our community. That is an extreme view, another counselor argued. Is it? Krex pulled up human technological progression charts. Look at this data. Every major technological advancement they made came from military research. Radar, jet propulsion, nuclear energy, computers, rocketry. Even their precious internet started as a military communication system. They turned war into an engine of innovation. Counselor Brindar of the Trade Federation spoke up. His species valued commerce above all else. Perhaps that is not entirely negative. Humanity has offered to share their technology freely. Their fusion reactor designs are more efficient than ours. Their materials science is remarkably advanced. They could provide economic benefits. At what cost? Thren countered. Read their proposed contribution to our defense database. 47 petabytes of military doctrine. That is not a small collection of defensive strategies. That is an encyclopedia of warfare. High Scholar Ventique looked uncomfortable. I have reviewed portions of that database. It contains detailed analysis of warfare tactics spanning their entire recorded history. Over 10,000 years of conflict documentation, strategic theories, tactical maneuvers, psychological warfare techniques, and something they call game theory, which applies mathematical principles to conflict. They have turned war into a science, Krex said grimly. But they have also achieved peace, another counselor pointed out. They unified their entire species under one government. They have not fought among themselves for 83 years. Does that not demonstrate growth? Vexthor listened to the debate with growing frustration. Finally, he requested permission to speak again. Counselors, if I may add something. During my conversation with Ambassador Vasquez, she explained how humanity achieved unity. They did not evolve beyond conflict. They achieved consensus through mutually assured destruction. They built enough weapons to kill themselves many times over. And then they decided that cooperation was the only logical choice. That is not peace, Thren said. That is a standoff. Perhaps, Vexthor admitted. But it has held for over 8 decades. And in that time, they have channeled their competitive nature toward space exploration rather than warfare. Is that not what we want? The debate continued for hours. Some species argued for immediate acceptance, others for complete rejection, and still others for a middle path. Finally, Counselor Mira of the Diplomatic Corps spoke. Her species had negotiated peace treaties across the galaxy for centuries. I have a proposal. We grant humanity provisional contact status. This allows limited interaction with the galactic community, but restricts their access to advanced technology and strategic information. We observe them for a period of, say, 50 years. If they demonstrate peaceful intentions during that time, we grant full membership. And if they demonstrate hostile intentions? Someone asked. Mira's expression was grim. Then we know to prepare defenses before they become too powerful. It was a compromise, but not a comfortable one. The council spent 2 more days debating the details. They studied every piece of data about humanity. They analyzed human culture, psychology, history, and potential. Some discoveries were encouraging. Humans had rich artistic traditions. Their music was complex and emotional. Their literature explored deep philosophical questions. They valued education and scientific discovery. They cared for their wounded and elderly, even when it was not economically beneficial. But other discoveries were disturbing. Human entertainment was filled with stories about war. Their most popular games involved combat. Their children played with toy weapons. Even their sports were often violent, with athletes deliberately colliding and fighting for victory. They celebrate competition, one counselor observed. Everything is a contest to them. Sports, business, politics, even their academic system ranks students against each other. Competition drives improvement, another countered. Perhaps that is why they developed so quickly. The final vote came on the 3rd day. The council chamber was tense as each species cast their decision. 47 civilizations voted. The result was 24 in favor of provisional status, 20 opposed, and 3 abstaining. Humanity would be granted limited contact with the galactic community. They could communicate with other species and engage in cultural exchange. But they would not receive advanced weapons technology. They would not be told the locations of all inhabited systems. They would not participate in council decisions. It was membership, but with chains attached. High Counselor spoke the final decision. Let the record show that humanity has been granted provisional contact status, effective immediately. They will be informed of the conditions and restrictions. This status will be reviewed in 50 Earth years. The council dismissed, but representatives lingered in small groups, continuing to discuss the human question. Vexthor noticed Admiral Krex speaking quietly with several military leaders from other species. He approached them. "Admiral, what are you discussing?" Krex looked at him with her cold reptilian eyes. "Contingencies, Commander. The Council has made its decision, but those of us responsible for galactic defense must plan for all possibilities. If humanity proves hostile, we need to be ready. You are planning for war? I am planning to survive, Commander. That is my job." Vexthor left the chamber feeling tired. The debate had resolved nothing, really. They had simply delayed a decision. In 50 years, they would face the same question again. But 50 years was a long time. And humanity developed very quickly. Vexthor wondered what humanity would look like in 50 years. Would they mature into peaceful citizens of the galaxy, or would they become something the galaxy had never seen before? Something the old civilizations were not prepared to handle. Only time would tell. And time, Vexthor thought, might be the one thing the galaxy did not have enough of. 6 months had passed since humanity received provisional status in the galactic community. The restrictions frustrated them, but Ambassador Vasquez had assured the Council that humanity would prove itself through patience and cooperation. Then the Kryn swarm arrived, at Sector 7. The Kryn were unlike any other species in the galaxy. They were not individuals, but a collective consciousness, billions of insect-like creatures acting as one mind. They had appeared on the galactic rim 300 years ago, and had been spreading ever since, consuming everything in their path. The galactic community had fought them dozens of times. Every time the Kryn adapted and grew stronger. Entire civilizations had been destroyed trying to stop them. The best the Council could do was slow their advance and evacuate threatened systems. Now they had pushed into protected space, and 3 Council systems fell in 1 week. In the Council chamber, panic was spreading. Admiral Krex stood at the central display, showing the Kryn advance. The red markers representing the swarm were spreading like infection across the star map. They hit the Pelton system first, Krex reported, her voice tight with stress. 4 billion Peltons evacuated, but 2 million did not make it out in time. The Kryn consumed the entire population and all biological material on the planet. Then they moved to the Yersin colonies. Same pattern. Now they are approaching the Frax homeworld. "How long until the defense fleet arrives?" Someone asked. 16 hours. But based on previous encounters, our weapons will be ineffective. The Kryn adapt to every tactic we use. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, biological agents, they counter everything within hours. Counselor Thren spoke up, his voice desperate. "What about the stellar disruptor? Could we collapse the local star? That would take days to position, and it would kill the Frax population we are trying to save. We need another option." The chamber filled with voices, species arguing over strategies that had failed before, the same old tactics that the Kryn had already beaten. Then a message arrived. It came through the limited communication channel that humanity had been granted for diplomatic purposes. "Galactic Council, this is Earth Space Command. We have been monitoring the situation in Sector 7 through our Deep Space Observation Network. We believe we can help." The chamber fell silent. Admiral Krex looked at the High Counselor, who nodded slowly. "Put them through." A holographic display activated, showing Ambassador Vasquez in the Earth Space Command headquarters. Behind her, Vexthor could see human officers working at multiple stations, their faces focused and calm. "Ambassador," the High Counselor said carefully, "humanity is under no obligation to involve itself in this crisis. Your provisional status does not require military participation." "We understand," Vasquez replied, "but we have analyzed the Kryn battle tactics and identified vulnerabilities. We wish to share this information." "You have analyzed them? How?" "We have been studying all available data on the Kryn since we first learned of their existence 3 months ago. We recognize the pattern. We have fought enemies like this before in our own history." Krex leaned forward. "You fought a collective consciousness swarm?" "Not exactly, but we fought enemies who adapted quickly, used overwhelming numbers, and employed psychological terror. We had enemies called the Mongol Horde that conquered half of our largest continent in 50 years. We fought ideological movements that spread like infections. We battled military forces that adapted to every tactic we used." Vasquez activated her own display. It showed Kryn attack patterns overlaid with human historical battles. The Kryn use rapid adaptation, overwhelming force, and psychological warfare through brutality. These are not new strategies. They are old ones, refined, and we learned how to counter them centuries ago. She sent a data file to the council. This is our analysis. 37 weaknesses in Kryn tactics. 12 strategic vulnerabilities. 4 potential extinction-level countermeasures. Admiral Krex opened the file, her eyes moving rapidly as she read. Her expression changed from skepticism to shock. This is incredibly detailed. Who compiled this? A military historian named Dr. Sarah Chen. She specializes in studying asymmetric warfare and empire collapse patterns. She recognized the Kryn immediately as a classic expansion swarm with a centralized command structure. How can you know they have centralized command? Someone asked. We have been fighting them for 300 years and never confirmed that. Because all successful swarm tactics require coordination, a new voice said. A human male appeared on the screen next to Vasquez. He wore a military uniform. I am General Marcus Williams. I have studied every recorded Kryn battle. Their attacks are too coordinated to be fully distributed intelligence. Somewhere in that swarm is a command node, probably multiple nodes for redundancy. Cut off the nodes and the swarm becomes confused. We have tried targeting individual Kryn ships, Krex said. It makes no difference now because you targeted ships, not command nodes. The nodes will be hidden, heavily defended and constantly moving, but they have to exist in high-density areas to maintain connection with the swarm. Our analysis suggests they position themselves in the second or third wave of attack formations, where they are protected but can still coordinate effectively. Williams sent tactical data to the council. Here are 3 battle formations we recommend. They are designed to draw out the swarm, identify the command nodes, and eliminate them while minimizing casualties. The council members looked at each other uncertainly. Councillor Thren spoke hesitantly. You are offering this information freely? You want nothing in return? We want to help, Vasquez said simply. That is what community members do. Besides, if the Kryn continue advancing unchecked, they will eventually reach our space. Better to stop them now. Admiral Krex studied the human tactical data. These formations would require exposing our forward fleet to heavy casualties in the initial engagement. Yes, General Williams agreed without hesitation. The first wave will take significant damage, but you will gain the information needed to win the battle. Sometimes you must sacrifice pawns to capture the king. It is an acceptable trade. The casual way he said it made several counselors flinch. Acceptable trade. He was talking about lives. But Krex understood military necessity. She had been a soldier for 200 years. I will implement 3 of these recommendations. If they work, we will reevaluate our strategy. The council dismissed and the defense fleet moved to intercept the Kryn at the Frax homeworld. Vexthor, serving as a liaison, watched the battle from the command ship. The human tactics were brutal but effective. The first wave of council ships engaged the Kryn swarm directly, taking massive damage, but they forced the Kryn to commit their full force, revealing their formation patterns. Admiral Krex studied the data, comparing it to the human analysis. There, she said, highlighting 3 clusters in the Kryn formation. Those match the predicted command node positions. The second wave of council ships ignored the main swarm and drove straight toward those clusters. The Kryn tried to adapt, pulling forces back to defend, but the human tactics had predicted that too. When the command nodes were destroyed, the change was immediate. The Kryn swarm did not collapse, but it became confused, less coordinated. Ships moved independently instead of as a unified force. The council fleet pressed the advantage. 6 hours later, the battle ended. The Kryn retreated for the first time in council history. They did not retreat far, but they retreated. The Frax homeworld was saved. Admiral Krex sent a message to Earth Space Command. Your analysis was correct. We have stopped the Kryn advance. You have our gratitude. Ambassador Vasquez appeared on screen again. We are glad we could help, Admiral. If you need further assistance analyzing the Kryn tactics, we are available. I have a question, Krex said slowly. Your General Williams spoke of sacrificing pieces to win the game. You have studied warfare for thousands of years. You know how to fight enemies more powerful than yourselves. Why? What drives a species to become so knowledgeable about death? Vasquez was quiet for a moment. Because we had no choice, Admiral. Humanity has faced extinction dozens of times in our history. Climate change, asteroids, disease, and most often ourselves. We learned to fight or we would have died. It was that simple. She paused, then continued. But we also learned something else. We learned that the only way to protect peace is to be ready for war. We don't seek conflict, but we prepare for it. Because in a universe full of unknown threats, preparation is the difference between survival and extinction. The Council was afraid of you, Krex said. Some still are. They think you are too violent, too dangerous. Perhaps we are, Vasquez admitted. But today our violence saved 4 billion Frax citizens. Our dangerous knowledge stopped an enemy that has killed trillions. Maybe the galaxy needs a little danger on its side. 2 weeks later, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. The vote was unanimous. Humanity was granted full membership in the galactic community. All restrictions removed. But Vexthor noticed something during the vote. Nobody celebrated. The species that voted yes did so quietly, almost reluctantly. They were not welcoming humanity as friends. They were acknowledging reality. The humans had proven their value, but they had also proven something more frightening. They had shown that they understood violence at a level the rest of the galaxy could not match. They had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of war, while other species barely remembered what war was. That night, Vexthor stood in his quarters looking at Earth on his display. The blue planet seemed peaceful, beautiful. But he knew what lived on that world now. Not monsters exactly, but something close. Humanity had not come to the stars seeking wonder. They had come prepared for nightmares. And when the nightmares arrived, humanity did not freeze or panic. They just smiled and said, "We know how to fight nightmares. We have been nightmares." The galaxy had wanted to believe that intelligence meant peace, that advancement meant leaving violence behind. Humanity had proven otherwise. Intelligence just meant better ways to fight. Advancement just meant more efficient weapons. The Kryn swarm had learned that lesson at Sector 7. They had met humanity's tactical analysis and found themselves outmaneuvered by a species that made warfare into science. Vexthor wondered what would happen when the galaxy fully understood what it had welcomed into its community. Would they see humans as protectors or as predators? Perhaps he thought humanity was both. Perhaps that was what made them so terrifying. The blue planet spun silently in space, and somewhere on its surface, human children were being born who would grow up among the stars. They would spread across the galaxy, carrying with them 10,000 years of hard lessons learned in blood and fire. The galaxy had frozen when Earth acknowledged their hail. Now the galaxy would have to live with the consequences of that acknowledgement. For better or worse, humanity had arrived.